Hi, my name is Noah Land, and today I will be discussing a lesson in which I plan to use Minecraft as a learning experience for my students. Now, just to provide some background information before I start discussing the project and the structure that I created as an example that my students can look at for what a castle can look like as part of their project. Now, just for background information, I teach 7th grade world history in Columbiana County, Ohio. This is my 5th year of teaching. It is my first experience using Minecraft in the classroom as an academic activity for students. Now, the center of this activity is going to be the manorial system. As we've been working our way through the state standards for Ohio for 7th grade world history, we have reached the point where we begin discussing the Middle Ages. Now, in the early Middle Ages, the feudal and manorial systems were incredibly important. For this project specifically, we are just looking at the manorial system. Now, the manorial system is a system of medieval economics that are centered around large estates called manors. Now, in these manors, you see various different features and various different groups of people that are common amongst the manors throughout the entirety of Europe during this time period. Now, in a typical manor, you are going to see several buildings. You are going to see, first of all, a manor house, which is where the noble family lives. Now, the noble house in a manor in the early Middle Ages of Europe is going to be a castle. This is one of the buildings that students will construct using Minecraft as part of this assignment. Castles during the early Middle Ages were not built for comfort, rather they were built for defense. Since these castles were built for defense, they had very small windows. They didn't allow much heat or much cool air to get into the structure, meaning that it was very hot during the summer and very cold during the winter in these castles. Now, castles during the early Middle Ages usually had one main room where every part of life would take place, whether that was entertaining, dining, or sleeping. Another very common feature that is seen in a medieval manor would be a village where peasants lived. Now, in this village, peasants would live in small cottages that were typically 1 to 2 rooms that they built themselves. Now, these cottages, they had floors that were made of packed dirt, they had wooden furniture, they had small windows to prevent heat from escaping, and they were made with a straw thatch roof for the most part. Also in manors, you would see a church to provide people with their spiritual needs. You would also see a mill where peasants could go to grind grain. They would have to pay a tax to the lords to use that mill, and you would also see a blacksmith shop. Now that we've kind of discussed some of the features that you would see in a typical manor, it's important to discuss some of the groups of people that you would see. I did mention lords and nobles when I was discussing the castle, but lords were the ones that owned the manors. Okay, this was their land, it was under their control, and they had most of the power in this situation. You also have peasants who are a part of a manor in medieval Europe. You see these peasants working the land for lords in exchange for the lord providing them with land and protection. Most of the manor's land is allocated to fields for crops and pastures for animals. Peasants were responsible for taking care of both of those things in addition to other services. You also see free people living in the manor as well. These free people included land-owning peasants who would rent land directly from the lord. They would pay rent for it. You also see skilled workers living on manors as free people. These would be people who were millers and blacksmiths. Priests were also commonly seen in the manors of medieval Europe. They would provide people with their spiritual needs, like we discussed with the church being present in the manor earlier. Now, for this project specifically, I started by creating a castle that students could replicate as part of their manor. As you can see on this slide here, it is a very basic structure. Across the base, there are 20 stone blocks used to create each wall. At the corner of each wall, you are going to see a tower. This tower is created using a 3 by 1 by 3 by 1 by 3 by 1 by 3 base, all out of stone blocks. The towers are built 18 blocks high, giving it more height than the other part of the structure, the walls that are built 15 blocks high. This structure is meant to replicate the castles that would be seen in medieval Europe. It is a structure that is meant specifically for defense. You can see there are very few windows. What you can't see is there are one window on each side of the castle besides the front. This is another angle of the front of the castle that I designed. This is, again, meant to replicate the castles seen in medieval Europe, where they are built for defense, not for comfort. On the inside of the castle, you can see that there is one main room here, again, replicating the castles that you would see in medieval Europe. This structure was designed so I can figure out whether or not the game was capable of doing something that could be replicated while students create a manor. The results that I got clearly indicate that this could be used successfully as students work to create their own project. Now, for this project, students will be divided in groups of 3 or 4. Students will be grouped based on ability. Prior to this project beginning, students will be surveyed on their experience using Minecraft. If it is possible, I am going to put a student that has a lot of experience with Minecraft in each one of the groups. That way, students who have less experience can use those more experienced students as a guide. They can rely on their classmates to help them work through. Now, for each group, they need to create a manor in Minecraft that includes a manor house, a castle, like the one that you see in the slideshow here. They also need to create a village where peasants live that includes at least 5 cottages for the peasants to live in. They need to create a church, a mill, and a blacksmith shop. Basically just replicating some of the main features that would be found in a typical manor in the early Middle Ages of Europe. After students with their groups collaborate and work with one another to creatively make their manor, they are going to take time to reflect on their manor and reflect on some of the people who would be living there. Now, in this situation, students are going to reflect on the manor itself, describing where fields for farming and for livestock are located in their manor. They are going to describe their castle, their village, their church, their mill, and their blacksmith shop. In addition to reflection on what they created, they are also going to analyze what role each social class would serve in their manor. They would discuss how the Lord provides protection and a plot of land for peasants to cultivate. They will talk about the various different types of peasants. One type of peasant that is seen in the manor is a serf. This is a worker who is legally tied to the manor on which they worked. Serfs were not slaves. They could not be sold from their manor, but they were not free to leave either without the permission of the Lord. Landowning peasants are the other types of peasants that students should describe in their analysis of who lives in the manor. Landowning peasants rent directly from the Lord. They pay taxes to the Lord in return for land. You also see skilled workers like millers and blacksmiths playing an important part, and priests who are providing people with their spiritual needs at the time. Students are going to work through each one of those social classes, and they are going to describe what role they play in the manor. They are also going to describe what life was like in each setting of the manor as well, specifically when it comes to what life was like in a castle versus what it was like in a village. I kind of touched on this earlier, but life in a castle was not necessarily comfortable all the time. These castles were specifically built for defense, okay? There were small windows. Earlier castles did not have any private rooms, as you can see in this picture that is currently up on the slideshow. There is one main room. Those main rooms served every part of life during the early Middle Ages, entertaining, dining, sleeping. That's what nobles did in their castles, all in that one main room. You also will have a village where students will construct, again, 5 cottages where peasants would live. As described earlier, these cottages were 1 to 2 rooms. They were built by peasants or serfs that were living there. Floor was packed dirt, straw thatch roofs, and small windows. Now, for the serfs and peasants in the manorial system, they would work in the village constantly. They did farming, they tended to livestock, they did other services as well. Men and boys specifically would work in the field. Women would sometimes join them. Women and girls would cook, sew, care for animals, and grow vegetables. And then last but not least, the entire serf family would be out in the field during the harvest. Now, this activity is going to be guided by 2 learning objectives. The first learning objective is for students to create this manor that includes all of the elements that were previously mentioned. The second learning objective is for students to reflect on the manor that they created and analyze the role that each social class of people will play in that manor that they created. Now, for differentiated instruction, once again, this is going to be a group project, 3 to 4 members per group. One group member is hopefully going to possess a great deal of experience with Minecraft and serve as a guide to their group mates as they work their way through this project. With Minecraft, you could also set it in creative mode where students are able to creatively design their manor. Student reflections, they are going to be given a choice in how this is going to take place. They can reflect and demonstrate their analysis and knowledge of the manorial system in a video created through iMovie, for example. They could do a written assessment that outlines what they have found, or they could create a presentation using an edtech tool like Google Slides or Canva. It brings student choice into the learning process and gives them an opportunity to drive their own learning. I will also be providing students with pre-made worlds, setting them up for success, allowing them to take the opportunity. Directions will be clearly outlined at the beginning of the activity so students know what to expect from the very beginning, and they are able to work from there. This activity is designed with the intention of allowing students to be creative, critically think, and collaborate with one another as they develop and enhance their knowledge of the manorial system. Minecraft is going to be the driving force behind this activity. Students will reflect on their experience and refine their knowledge as they do so. Thank you for your time. I appreciate you watching the video. I look forward to working with everyone later.